Margaret stared at the empty coffee mug across from her at the kitchen table, the one Harold had used every morning for 37 years. 3 months had passed since the funeral, yet she still set out 2 cups each dawn, muscle memory refusing to accept what her mind knew to be true. The house felt cavernous without his gentle humming and the rustle of newspaper pages. Her daughter Sarah had been calling daily, voice thick with worry. "Mom, you need to get out. Join a book club, take a class, anything." But Margaret couldn't imagine finding joy in activities that once brought her pleasure. The garden Harold had lovingly tended now grew wild, and she couldn't bear to touch his tools. That Tuesday morning, Sarah arrived unannounced with a surprise that would change everything. In her arms was a golden retriever mix, about 2 years old, with amber eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom despite his youth. "Mom, meet Max," Sarah said gently. "The shelter said he's been returned twice. His previous owners couldn't handle his energy, but I think you two might need each other." Margaret shook her head. "Sarah, I can barely take care of myself. I can't possibly." Max padded forward and placed his head on Margaret's lap, looking up at her with those knowing eyes. Something in her chest, frozen solid for months, began to crack. "Just for a week," Sarah pleaded. "If it doesn't work out, I'll find him another home." That first night, Max stationed himself beside Margaret's bed, a warm presence in the suffocating darkness. When she woke at 3 a.m. sobbing Harold's name, Max was there, pressing his solid weight against her side. He didn't try to fix her pain, simply absorbed it with patient acceptance. By morning, Margaret realized she'd slept better than she had in months. Max's needs created structure where there had been none. He required walks, meals, attention. Margaret found herself setting alarms again, stepping outside into sunlight that felt foreign on her skin. The dog had boundless enthusiasm for simple pleasures, the rustle of leaves, the smell of rain, children playing in the distance. During their third walk, Mrs. Chin from next door approached hesitantly. "Margaret, I've been wanting to check on you, but I didn't want to intrude. What a beautiful dog." As Max charmed Mrs. Chin with his gentle demeanor, Margaret found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. About Harold's final days, about the crushing silence in the house, about feeling lost in her own life. "Grief isn't something you get over," Mrs. Chin said softly. "It's something you learn to carry. This sweet boy seems to understand that." Max had a peculiar habit of bringing Margaret small gifts, a pine cone from their walk, a tennis ball forgotten in the park, once even a child's lost mitten. He'd present these treasures with such pride that Margaret couldn't help but smile, despite herself. The first real laugh came on a rainy Thursday. Max had somehow managed to get his head stuck in a cereal box while investigating breakfast possibilities. His muffled confusion and the ridiculous sight of a dog wearing Cheerios packaging as a helmet struck Margaret as absurdly funny. The sound of her own laughter startled her, rusty but real. Harold had always said laughter was the shortest distance between two hearts. Maybe it was also the shortest distance back to yourself. Slowly, Margaret began venturing beyond necessity. She and Max visited the farmer's market, where vendors remembered Harold and welcomed her with gentle warmth. They explored hiking trails where Max could run free while Margaret rediscovered her love of nature photography, something Harold had always encouraged. Max seemed to sense when the waves of grief would hit. On Margaret's worst days, he'd bring her his favorite rope toy, not to play but simply to place it in her hands, his most precious possession offered as comfort. 6 months later, Sarah found her mother in Harold's garden, Max supervising as Margaret planted spring bulbs. Dirt streaked her cheeks, but her eyes held light Sarah hadn't seen since the funeral. "I'm not the same person I was before," Margaret said, straightening with effort. "I'll never be her again. But maybe that's okay. Maybe there's room in this new version of me for joy alongside the sadness." Max bounded over, tail creating small hurricanes in the fallen leaves, and Margaret scratched behind his ears. Harold would have loved this ridiculous, wonderful dog who'd taught her that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning to smile through the remembering. In the evening light, surrounded by the promise of spring blooms and unconditional canine devotion, Margaret felt something she'd thought lost forever, hope.